So I wanted to spend a few seconds just defining what a Jeremiad is, and it's a difficult concept, but basically a Jeremiad is a form of literature, sometimes nonfiction, sometimes not, that's an attempt to explain what we would call God's will. And of course we see a significant amount of religion invoked in Jeremiads, and a lot of times they focus on trials and tribulations and then trying to explain why this happens. And so a lot of times Jeremiad is somebody experiencing personal turmoil, sort of apocalyptic visions that we'll see a little bit later on in Michael Wigglesworth, Day of Doom, and so on. But anyway, in this case, I just wanted to bring forward Mary Rowlandson, and this is in our textbook, basically 145 onwards. We have this strange break when she's done telling her story, and this is what a Jeremiad does. Basically, she suddenly starts saying, look at all this stuff that's happened to me. Here are the reasons why, or this is how God is interacting, even if it's bad, right? There's a plan that's at work here. And so she says basically on 146 that all of this stuff is happening, that Native Americans are coming and taking people away, etc. And she says bluntly, on 146 at the bottom of the first paragraph, is the Lord's doing, and it should be marvelous in our eyes. And then in the second bullet point basically that she puts there, she said, look, the British weren't supposed to be ready, the Indians were making fun of us, but look, we did it, we're ready and we're fighting. And then at the end of bullet number 3, she said God had an overruling hand in all of these things. And 4, she said, look, we tried to kill off all the Native Americans, but they stayed alive. Why is that? And he said basically, yet by that God strengthened them to be a scourge to his people. In other words, that they would be stronger as a result of this. And so that this would be an explanation for why Native Americans are harassing. It's kind of like the old thing, like why would God, why a bad thing happens if God is good, that sort of thing. And the Jeremiad is supposed to explain the answer to that question. And Mary Rowlandson is very much saying, like, look, here's the stuff that this is what's happening in the background, this is what God is trying to do. And then at the bullet point number 5, she pretty much just bluntly says that the strange providence of God in turning things about when the Indian was at its highest and the English at its lowest, that all of this stuff is some sort of grand plan that people just don't understand. They need to take a look back and try to figure it out. And then later on, she sort of closes with a little bit of a sermon on 151. It starts with, I have seen the extreme vanity of this world. And so one thing to know about this narrative in particular, Mary Rowlandson, is that her editor and sort of the person that she interviewed with Cotton Mather, who also appears in this text, but he's a pretty big deal in Puritanism, a Puritan minister, probably the guy at the time, other than his dad, who were major Puritan icons in the United States, or what was becoming America. And so there is some belief that maybe Cotton wrote a significant portion, because the way the narrative works with Mary Rowlandson is that we have a typical captivity narrative, and then suddenly it breaks right around page 139, 140 in our text, and suddenly becomes a religious tract. And it's easy to see Cotton Mather just sort of putting this out there and saying, look, here's what's happening. This is why this is happening. This is why it's beneficial to us. It fulfills our belief system. So again, in Jeremiad, fairly straightforward, just sort of an explainer for why bad things happen, from a religious context or a religious perspective.